So the next film I'm going to go into is the third installment of the Depression trilogy, which was Nymphomaniac, 2013. I know you haven't seen this one.
No.
I've seen this one twice now. It's a movie that's in two parts. Both parts are 3 hours long, so it's a 6-hour movie. I thought Gone with the Wind was long. This is long. And it's a Lars von Trier film, so it's also 6 hours of really sad, really depressing, really quiet
moments.
Yeah, exactly. So, if you're gonna watch this one, just kind of, take it in a few days. Like, don't just go through the whole thing. I did that. I don't know why I did that, but anyways, this one once again stars Charlotte Gainsbourg as the female character, and basically the film in essence is a very ugly look at a woman who has a sex addiction. It's a very ugly look at her life. It starts off as her being a kid to a young adolescent, teenager, and then to the point that she is now, which I would say is probably around her midlife point. Charlotte Gainsbourg, Stellan Skarsgård, Shia LaBeouf, Christian Slater, and Uma Thurman are all in this film. But it starts off with Stellan Skarsgård finding the character of Charlotte in an alleyway. Somebody had beaten her and left her there, basically, to die. And he takes pity on her. He wants to call the cops, call an ambulance, but she's like, no, please don't call anybody. I'm fine. I'll just go. And he says, you're obviously not fine. Let me take you in. Let me make you a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, and we'll get you cleaned up. And so he brings her into his home, and he I don't know if he bathes her or not. I think he just gives her some clean clothes. He puts her to bed. He makes her a cup of hot tea. And then he sets up a chair next to the bed, and he basically just starts chatting with her. And, what happened? How did you get to this point? And she said, well, I guess I better start from the beginning. And she basically, the entire run of the film is her telling him about her entire life. I mean, from the very beginning right up until the point when he saw her in the alleyway. No matter whether it's drugs, alcohol, it's sex, or whatever, addiction can really be quite devastating to whoever is afflicted with it. Not only them, but I mean their family around them as well. It's devastating. You want to help these people, but sometimes you can't. It starts off with her being, a young woman and just exploring everything, getting herself into a bit of trouble here and there for sure. Not really taking other people's considerations or feelings into consideration. And where should I go from there? It's such a long movie, and I don't want to go into great details because some of it's probably not really appropriate for YouTube or for your channel, I should say. Let's see.
Well, let's look at it this way. Having seen the whole film, and knowing it goes through mental illness and depression the same way the other two did, how would you view it as part of the trilogy?
Okay. Alright, so, well, obviously, actually, funny you mentioned that, because this actually, Nymphomaniac had a little nod to Antichrist, specifically, because when it gets to the second part of the film, when she's an adult and she has a husband and a child, there is a scene where she's making love to her husband, and her child is slowly climbing up a little box up towards the window, and it's that same song that I mentioned in the beginning of Antichrist, that beautiful song that I don't know what it's called, and but they catch him on time. So it wasn't exactly like they see him climbing up towards the window and they grab him and they save him. But I mean, it was definitely a big nod towards Antichrist. The whole depression theme in this is like I was saying before, addiction has its hold over its victims. I mean, it was everything. Like to her, nothing else mattered than getting her next high, getting her next fix, getting her next orgasm. Like that was her number one goal in life. There was a particular scene where she finds out. Well, I mean, like she goes through the motions of her entire life. This. Like this one method really satisfied her, but then after a while it doesn't. So then she needs to find something else that would satisfy her, and then that works for a little while, and then it doesn't, and then it's just she gets to the more and more extreme ways to get her satisfaction, and she eventually finds a gentleman who is a dominant, and he doesn't necessarily give sexual pleasure. He's a dominant, so all he does is he inflicts pain onto willing subjects, But I mean, she realized that this was actually giving her a release as well. So this was her next high. This was her next. She had to be there, and he had very specific times in which she had to be there. Like otherwise, she wouldn't be allowed to come back anymore. And her babysitter didn't show up one night, and her child was asleep in bed, and instead of calling to try to find another babysitter, she was, it was late, it was getting late, she wasn't going to be able to make her appointment on time, so she just leaves her child home and goes to her appointment to have her fix, I mean, it was just kind of, and it ended up being a normal thing. Like I think she ended up doing it a few times because she realized that, because when she came home and she saw that the child was still asleep in bed, she's like, oh, okay, great, well, maybe I can do it again, and it just ended up being an issue. And then at this point, her partner, I think her and her partner were no longer together, which is why the child was home by himself. He comes home to find that she's not there. And the child is home by himself, and he's like, what is this? And he basically says, like, I can't believe you are this irresponsible. I can't believe you would risk, your child's life to go get whatever it is that you're getting. And she was getting ready to leave, I think, to go to her appointment. And he said, if you walk out that door right now, you'll never see me and you'll never see your child again. And instead of her saying, oh, okay, well, I'll stay and help, she goes over and she very, very sobbingly says goodbye to her child. Says, I love you, I'll miss you. And then she leaves. She never sees her child again. Just because she needs to have that release. It's just like, it was devastating. She tells the character of Stella, as she's telling her story, that she is a bad person. Like, that's what she keeps saying. She's like, I'm a terrible person. And he always says, oh, I don't believe you. And then eventually, all this information comes out. And, I mean, you feel for her, that's for sure. But, I mean,
it's not so much that she's a bad person as she made mistakes.
She made mistakes.
Really bad mistakes.
Really bad mistakes. Yes, that all kind of combined into this one whole situation, and she starts trying to get help, and she goes to a sex addict, almost like an AA class, SA class, I guess, and all the women that are there are basically trying to convince her that, like, what we are doing is wrong, like it's wrong, you should not be doing it, we should not be doing it, you should be, like, instead of kind of like taking it and just trying to change it, it was just like, cold turkey, you are a bad person for doing what it is that you're trying to do. And eventually, after a few meetings, she just kind of stands up and she says, you know what, I'm not like you guys, I love my body, I love myself, and she also says that she loves her filthy, dirty lust. Like I was saying, this whole story starts off with her being found in the alley by that gentleman. So throughout the stories, while she's telling each story, it cuts back to the bedroom where she's telling the story, And the gentleman, he takes these. I mean, they're pretty far fetched and kind of outrageous, but he takes it quite seriously, and he always has some kind of comparison to make with her story, whether it is politics, religion, even fishing at some point, science, math, everything. He had some sort of part in his life that he could kind of relate to, but not necessarily in a sexual manner, but more, like I said, in politics or in religion or what have you. So that was kind of interesting. And they as they go through their conversation, we find out that this gentleman, who is well in his 50s, is a virgin, has never had a sexual encounter at all, and he claims to be asexual, just doesn't have a sexual preference to men or women in general, just has never been interested in sex at all, which is why he's gone his whole life without it. So that was it was just a little blip in the movie, but it ends up being quite a big point at the end of the movie. She eventually finds some work that involves, it's kind of like, I guess you could almost say, like tax sharks, where you go to a house, you intimidate somebody until they pay you.
Loan sharking.
Thank you. So it's something along the lines of...
It's the enforcers for the loan sharks.
Exactly. So because she is a very strong character, she's not exactly the muscle. Like, she has the muscle with her behind her, so she just comes in and she says, "Hello, we are so and so."
She's the pleasantries before the muscle.
Exactly. Eventually, the whole situation where she's found in the alleyway, it was actually the lover that she's had right from the beginning of the film, was having an affair with basically the little protege. Does that mean somebody who's coming up and going to be taking over? Is that what it is? Her protege in the company of the loan sharks was having an affair with her old lover, and she found out, and it kind of it sparked something in her, and she was so mad that she tries to kill him. She tries to kill both of them, and the gun doesn't go off, so she's just standing there holding a gun at him, and he turns around and he thinks it's kind of funny, and so then he just beats the absolute poop out of her in the alleyway, and that's how she got found. So it's like a whole circle of the entire story. And so once she's finished telling her story, the character Stellan Skarsgård, he's satisfied with the story, and he walks away and he leaves her, and she goes to sleep. But then she is rudely woken up by this character who is claimed to be asexual and a virgin, basically climbing on top of her, trying to have sex with her. And she's like, "No, like, you've got this all, like, what are you doing?" And then he says, "But you've slept with everyone." And like, just the way that he went about saying that to her after all these stories that she's told, and the way that he found her, was just so, like, it was almost like someone punched me in the stomach. Like, how could you do something like that after what she's been through, what she's just told you? So anyways, she ends up, the film ends with her shooting him. I don't know where she got the gun. I can't really remember. I think he had it in the room.
Or it might have been she still had it on her.
Oh, maybe, exactly.
Before she got beaten.
That's right. And that was it. It was the end. But I mean, like, the whole story, the story as a whole was pretty terrible and horrible, as you're going through it. But I mean, just that small little interaction at the very end of the movie was just, I think, was the most profound part of the whole film. Just this man who seemed to be so understanding and was trying to help her and had all of these stories to tell back to her, and he just takes advantage of her. But anyways, that's Nymphomaniac in a nutshell. It's not for everyone.
Now that it's like done as a whole, how do you feel that completes the rest of the trilogy? Because I haven't seen the other two in the trilogy. Like, do you feel like that completes it? Because to him, that was it. That was done. Like, was it the fact that she wasn't an nymphomaniac anymore and she got out of the circle and she got to a better place only to try to be drugged back down and then ended it on her own terms? Is that why it's the end of the trilogy?
If I had to have any kind of guess into it, I would absolutely agree with what you just said, for sure. I mean...
Because I just find it so strange that... Because it's not a concept that people normally think of when they think of a trilogy of things.
No.
Was there any other, like, was there any reference again to, like, the fox and the crow and the deer?
I didn't see any reference to the fox, the crow, or the deer in this one at all, in fact. I'm just trying to think.
Because I know it came up in both Antichrist and Melancholia, but then this one did that reference back to the baby.
To the baby in Antichrist, which was the first film that he... But, yeah, I don't know what to say.
Well, both, it's sort of like the surrealist thing. You could also, like, link that to, like, old German expressionism and stuff like that as well. But, like, also kind of like noir in a way, where there's, like, it's a lot of tragic incidents and a lot of things are shot in a very dramatic way. Usually at the time it was, like, black and white, but, like, they're grittier, darker films, and they sort of end in a very final way as well, and these do also.
Yeah.
So,
oh, that's a good point.
yeah, there might be some of that influence in there as well. I don't know, it seems like it pulls from a lot of different pools and sort of just throws it together. He's an interesting filmmaker, for sure.
Very interesting, yes. I mean, I enjoyed them as, like, the experience of watching them, but, like, it's, I don't want to say that, like, I loved this film, because, like, it's so, I don't even know how to explain it.
Yeah.
You know, like when something is so raw and gritty and dark and depressing as it is, like, you don't want to say, oh, I loved it, it was so great, because, I mean, it was so terrible. It was terrible.
I'd put it like this. I'd watch Melancholia again.
Yep.
And I've recommended it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know that I'd ever watch Dancer in the Dark again. I mean, I'm glad I had the experience of it, but I don't know that I would ever watch that again.
Yeah.
Like in full honesty, I completely ugly cried at the end of this.
Yeah, let's start talking about Dancer in the Dark then. Holy moly. So the next film we're going to talk about is Dancer in the Dark, which was released in 2000, which stars Bjork, Catherine Deneuve, I don't know if I'm butchering her name or not, David Morse, and Peter Stormare? Anyways.
Your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah, no, I have no idea. Anyways, this was kind of an interesting film, and this is one of the ones that Mandy's actually seen. It's one that I was a little apprehensive to watch, mainly because I'm not a huge fan of Bjork. Not saying that, like, I hate her or anything like that. It's just her music as a whole is
really like her stuff, or I really don't.
It's just completely over my head, and I don't get it.
Like, I love her song. It's so quiet.
Yeah.
Like, I love that song, but, like, that particular song.
Yeah.
Because it's just so crazy, and, like, I don't know, I just love it.
Yeah.
There's some of her stuff that I love and I see the humor in, and, you know, and other stuff that I just don't, like you said, like, it's just sort of like,
yeah, go straight over
like,
my head.
not for me, I guess.
Yeah. So, this was actually, funny enough, I'm totally going on a tangent here. I have a coworker who I always talk about movies with, and Lars von Trier comes up quite often because he's a bit of a film buff as well. And I had never seen Dancer in the Dark or Dogville, and this year for Christmas he got me for Secret Santa, and he found a used copy of Dancer in the Dark and Dogville for me for Christmas, which was great. It's awesome. But anyway, so that was my motivation, my major motivation to watch it, because I actually had a physical copy in my hand. But anyways, it is like the whole film as a whole, like, it was kind of it's not your typical...
It's a musical, but it's not your typical musical.
No, not
because
at all.
I'm a huge fan of musicals and musical theater.
Yeah.
And, like, I've seen a lot of them and I really love them. And there's a lot of, like, nods to Sound of Music in this, including, like, at least 3 of the songs,
yes.
I think, from The Sound of Music.
Yes.
And they're putting that on in the background as a play, so it's kind of like a musical within a musical.
Exactly.
but it's really not, even though it is a musical, you don't tend to think of them as tragedies necessarily.
No.
They're either humor pieces or they're drama pieces, but they're not usually like this much of a tragedy piece.
No, not at all. Like you typically look at a musical as being very uplifting and happy and very...
Or it's sad in a very particular way, like
Yes.
Rent.
Yeah, oh yes. Yeah.
Right? Like there's some sort of... Like it is a tragedy or drama, but it's not like Shakespearean sense
Right,
tragedy the way that this is.
Right. The story starts out, it's 1964, and the character that Bjork plays is a, very meek and mild, very happy Czechoslovakian woman. She's from Czechoslovakia.
She's a refugee, isn't she?
Yeah, she's an immigrant, yes. And she's working in a big, it looks like a sheet metal factory. Just, the same kind of thing every day, putting the sheet metal in and back and forth, the same thing every single day, very much of a routine. And, through the drudgery of her day, her job's not bad, it's just, I guess, it's a little bit boring and perhaps not giving her the amount of money that she would like to have, she's paying the bills just barely, but, it's a job. And through the drudgery of her day, she always seems to see like the music and everything. That was one of the kind of interesting things I found, is that she'd start daydreaming and just the noises of the machines would like start a beat, and then she would start dancing, and then all of a sudden there's a huge musical number in the sheet metal factory, which I thought was kind of interesting. Even though it was Bjork singing and performing, which, like I said, it kind of goes over my head. It was interesting, and it was very kind of unexpected the first time it happened, because I didn't really know.
You didn't expect it to be a musical.
Well, no, not at all.
In my experience with his style of filmmaking, because this is still very much his style of filmmaking, it doesn't seem like it would suit a musical.
No, not at all.
It definitely doesn't follow your typical musical format.
No,
but
not at all.
At the same time, so it does seem unexpected, but then you just sort of roll with it.
Right.
It tends to be a lot of symbolism for how she's feeling inside and how she wishes things were, rather than how they actually are, I think, for the musical parts, which is why, like, things make a beat, because I think she's fantasizing about being elsewhere, I guess, or, like, the job being more than what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So we find out a little bit later on that she's obviously having a little bit of issue with her vision. She doesn't outright come out and say it. She's obviously trying to keep it a secret, because unfortunately for her, working in a factory, you need to have all of your senses. Like, it's very dangerous, to have any kind of...
And she's a single parent.
She's a single parent, yeah. It's just her and her young boy renting out a very small house.
Cannot lose this job.
Exactly. She can't lose this job, so she keeps very quiet about her vision. She doesn't tell anyone. She doesn't tell her son. She doesn't tell... I think the only person in the whole film who knows that her vision is ailing is her best friend, who also works at the factory, and she knows, and she kind of keeps an eye out on her. Like, if she sees her doing something a little out of the ordinary, she comes over to stop, don't do that,
And we learn that she's found out it's a hereditary disease.
Yes.
And things are just going to keep getting worse, so she decides that she's going to put away as much of her paycheck as possible into a savings jar.
Right.
And which is literally a jar in her house.
Mm-hmm.
To pay for a surgery. And because it's so expensive, she can only afford to pay for it for her son. She can't get it for herself as well.
Right.
And once you lose your vision fully, it's too late to have the surgery, according to the terms of the film.
Right.
So she wants to make sure it's done soon enough for her son, so that he'll be able to see and work and have a good life.
Right. So it turns out that the people that she's renting from is, I think, the town sheriff. or deputy or something. Anyhow, she's friends with him. They're friendly, I should say. They're just renting a very small little. I wouldn't even say a cottage. I think it's like a 1-bedroom, kitchen, bathroom kind of a area, just off of their main house. He confides in her that I think they're having a hard time keeping ends met because his wife is spending frivolously. Is that what happened?
Yeah, he says it's because of his wife's lavish lifestyle.
Yes.
And he's basically trying to keep up with the Joneses, we'll say.
Yeah.
And provide all the best like he's always done, because he's got a few different jobs, and one of them is landlord, and he can't keep up the means for it.
Right.
So because he's confided this in her, she's confided her issue of her blindness and trying to get the surgery in time for her son.
That's right.
So now that he knows about her blindness, he's noticing more and more how much it's quickly starting to degrade her vision. And he eventually takes advantage of that fact and hides in her house, which is one of the creepiest scenes ever, by the way.
Yeah.
Ever, is him just standing there watching. And she has no idea.
She has no idea he's there.
And he steals her savings.
Yeah. And then eventually, I mean, she goes to put some money in the tin or something along the lines of that.
Yeah, because she's lost her job now because her vision is
that's
bad
right.
enough that it's noticeable, and she's lost her job.
Yes.
So she takes whatever's left of her paycheck, and instead of like paying bills, she knows if she takes all this money now, it'll be enough to get the surgery.
Yep.
And she goes to put it in the jar, and there's nothing there.
There's nothing in the jar. So that's pretty sad. And so, I mean, she puts 2 and 2 together. The one person that she confided in about the tin and the money. So she very blindly makes her way over to his house and confronts him about it. And it's this kind of bizarre, like, he denies it, yet you can see on his face that he's very guilty. Like, it's this whole struggle, like, he knows he's doing something wrong, but he feels like he needs it more than she does. And then there's this really kind of a sad struggle between the both of them, because she's trying so desperate to get her money back. Yeah. She's so desperate.
And they sort of have a fight, and they struggle with a gun because he has a gun.
Yeah.
And he's trying to get her to leave, and basically it comes out to the jigs and rails of it that he's been very depressed because of these money issues. And he had been thinking of committing suicide, but basically didn't have the guts to do it.
Right.
And he's like, if you kill me now, you can have all your money back.
Yeah.
You can just take the money and go.
Yeah. Which is like, I mean, processing this while there's this big struggle going on the screen was just crazy. And I think he ends up pointing the gun at himself, and she pulls the trigger.
Yeah, because she tries to hurt him and can't quite kill him because she can't see enough to do it. So he basically helps her aim it at him so that it'll kill him.
Yeah.
And then she takes the money and goes.
Yeah.
Now, meanwhile, the wife
is at home and is like downstairs when this whole thing happened.
And hears the struggle and has called the police. And she thinks that basically she's murdered her husband.
Exactly.
And not that it was suicide.
Right.
And she goes on trial for it. And again, as typical with his movies, it completely changes track and becomes a completely different type of film all of a sudden.
Exactly.
Now it's a court case.
Yeah. Well, because once she kills the gentleman and she takes the money, she immediately brings the money to the clinic where her son would be getting the money or getting the surgery, and she pays for it. I don't think it's quite in full. I think she said that this was all that I had, and they were like, all right, well, we'll deal with it as we can. We'll accept this payment and we'll put your son's name down, and
we'll have him on the list for the surgery.
Exactly.
And because she's now facing this trial and there's lawyer fees and whatever, she's basically been all but convicted.
Exactly.
On the evidence, circumstantial evidence, which I mean is pretty strong, let's face it.
Yes.
But her best friend at the plant doesn't believe she's done it.
Right.
So she gets together with someone else they were friends with at the plant.
Yeah.
And they sort of finish raising money for the lawyer fees, and they find out about the other money that she had, and they use it to pay for her court case to get her out.
Exactly.
Which she doesn't want them to do because she wants her son to have surgery.
Exactly.
And she gets very upset.
Yes. Well, it was so upsetting to watch. But, I mean, because, her friend took her money to pay for the lawyer. I mean, at first she's glad because they were able to pay for a good lawyer that could get her out of prison. But
then
like
she
said,
realizes
it was the money for her son. She's like, no, I'm not going to accept it.
She was like, I'll die before I let this happen to my son.
Exactly.
And so it's such a gut-wrenching thing that, of course, her friend obeys her wishes.
Yeah.
And uses all the money that was going to be for the lawyer to pay for the surgery instead.
Exactly.
And because she doesn't have proper representation, she goes to jail and is given the death penalty.
Yep. And she spends the next while on death row, and she sings in her empty jail cell, and it's so sad. It's so sad.
You can tell she's sad and upset. And
absolutely.
It's very gut-wrenching because she's very torn because she has no idea what's happening with her son.
Yeah.
And she's on death row. And finally, at the very end of it, just before she's going to go to death, the final thing, she comes up and she's like, your son had his surgery.
Yeah.
And he's recovering and everything's going to be fine.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about anything anymore. And it's those final moments she just starts to sing, and for the first time with no other music.
Yeah.
As she's being hung.
Yeah.
And she doesn't even get to finish the song.
She doesn't get to finish
and
it.
It's the most gut-wrenching thing in the world. And it just ends like that.
Yeah, and that's it. I ugly cried when I watched this movie.
Yeah, we both ugly cried at the end.
Yeah.
It was so...
It's very moving. It's very sad. Wow. And just like you said, I don't think I could bring myself to watch this movie again. I mean, it was so great to see. I never thought
Bjork's an awesome actress.
Oh my god! I had no idea.
You totally 100% believe that.
This
so much. It's such a strong performance.
Yes.
Absolutely incredible. But and as glad as I am that I've seen it and had the experience, I don't know that I could watch that again.
No, I don't think so either.
It was a lot.
Yes, it was. But and that's watching the end of this. I remember just ugly crying and saying, "Well, that's just Lars von Trier." And Dan's like, "What?"
I mean, this is one of those times. I was saying to Audrey earlier before we started this, I was glad Christmas got away for the weekend because the unintelligible noises that happened at the ugly cry at the end was he would have absolutely come from wherever he was in the house and been like, what is wrong? Because it just he would wonder if I was hurt or if there was something actually wrong because it was not a good scene.
No.